This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Have you ever tried to read French philosophy and just felt completely lost? Wondering if there's some secret key to unlock it all? Well, if that's you, you're in the right place. Today, we're uncovering the one surprising secret that ties together 150 years of French thought.
I mean, you hear names like Foucault, Sartre, Derrida, and you immediately think of these super dense, complex books that feel almost impossible to get through. It's like you need a special decoder ring just to understand the first page, right? But what if the key isn't where we've all been looking?
That's right. The real answer, the thing that connects all of modern French philosophy, isn't hiding in some massive, brilliant book. It's not some grand, unified theory.
Believe it or not, it's a high school exam, a national test that every single French student has had to take for the last century and a half. I know, it sounds a little nuts, but stick with me. This one test is the real engine behind French intellectual life.
Okay, so let's really dig into this. We're about to explore how a mandatory school exam, not some fancy university department, ended up shaping one of the most influential intellectual traditions on the planet.
So here's the big idea for this whole explainer. Try to forget, just for a moment, the idea of French philosophy as a bunch of competing theories. Instead, I want you to think of it as a consistent method, a way of training citizens to think, which has been locked in place since the 1870s.
And to get how this all started, we have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back to a moment of huge national crisis for France, a moment that forced the country to make a choice that would define its intellectual future for good.
So, in 1871, France gets absolutely crushed by Prussia. And this wasn't just a military loss. It felt like a total failure of their entire system. So what did they do? They started what you could call a German boom, frantically copying their rivals' super-efficient models for their government, their military, and especially their schools.
But here's the fascinating part. In the middle of all this copying, France drew a hard line in the sand. They said, okay, we'll take your systems, but we are not importing your philosophy to be the foundation of our state.
And this chart just lays out the two paths so clearly. You see, Germany used philosophy to build the intellectual bedrock of the entire state. It was a job for experts at universities. France, they made a totally different call. They decided to use philosophy as a practical tool to train regular citizens starting in high school.
And this wasn't just some vague idea they had. No, they baked it right into the DNA of the nation, with a mandatory school subject and one single, incredibly powerful exam. So, under what was called the Third Republic, philosophy got a very clear job. It became a required class for every student in their final year of high school. The goal? To create good, clear-thinking citizens for the new republic. And the method was always the same. You had to write one structured essay on a big, abstract question.
And this is absolutely the key. The French philosophy exam, what they call the bac philo, was never about just memorizing what Kant or Hegel said. Nope. It was a test of how well you could think. Could you build an argument? Could you reason your way through a tricky problem? It was basically a workout for your brain.
What's really cool is you can see the entire mood of the country just by looking at the exam questions over the years. Check this one out from 1912, right before World War I. You can just feel that sense of doubt starting to creep in, that questioning of whether progress was all it was cracked up to be.
Now, let's jump forward to 1947. France is reeling from World War II and the German occupation. And look how the questions change. All of a sudden, it's all about freedom, individual choice, responsibility. I mean, these are the exact themes that would make thinkers like Sartre and Camus household names.
Okay, one more. By 1966, France is a modern, successful, and very well-managed state. So what does the exam start asking? It starts poking at the invisible systems of control, the link between knowledge and power. These are the very questions that would soon make Michel Foucault one of the most famous thinkers in the world.
So when you have this consistent nationwide training program in abstract thinking going on for decades, well, it creates the perfect environment for a whole new kind of public figure to show up. Let's call them the intellectual star. And here's the thing about these stars. They didn't get famous by building these giant, complicated philosophical systems from the ground up. No, they became famous because they were experts at giving a voice and a vocabulary to the feelings and anxieties that an entire population had already been trained to think about in school. And this table just nails it, especially when you look at the postmodernists. These guys weren't just inventing weird ideas out of nowhere. Thinkers like Deleuze, Derrida, and Lyotard were putting a precise name on these vague feelings of anxiety or displacement that people were already sensing in their own lives. You know, the system was so strong that even when major foreign ideas finally showed up, they got filtered through it. When the German philosopher Hegel finally became popular in France in the 1930s, his work wasn't adopted as some grand system. Instead, it was detoxified. It was broken down into useful little concepts, like the other, that a student could use as tools in an exam essay.
So after going through this whole 150-year story, what's the big takeaway? What's the real secret of modern French philosophy?
It really comes down to this powerful and kind of weird-sounding idea. The real genius of French philosophy is that it never tried to be great in the same way that, say, German philosophy did. And by not trying to be great, French philosophy managed to avoid becoming dangerous. It never tried to be the ultimate blueprint for how to run the country. It never turned into a rigid national ideology. And most importantly, it was never locked away in an ivory tower just for a few elite professors.
You could say its real strength was its humility. By just staying a practical, democratic subject taught in high schools, philosophy stayed alive and relevant in French culture, through wars, revolutions, and massive social change. It survived because it knew its purpose and it knew its limits.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. If your country had an exam like this, a test designed to capture the central question of our time and train citizens to think about it, what single question do you think would be on it today?
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.